All right, take two, and welcome to Critical Weight Theory. Today I'm stepping into the heart of Stevie Wonder's classic period, a run of albums that changed the sound of popular music in the 1970s. Right in the center of that streak sits a record that often gets overshadowed by the giants around it, yet still stands as one of his most focused and emotionally rich works, according to fans and critics. That's right, I'm talking about Fulfillingness First Finale, released in July 1974 on Motown's Tamla label. And many fans call this album one of the best of all time. It sits between Talking Book, Inner Visions, and Songs in the Key of Life, which is some of the strongest company any artist has ever kept. Now, this album and Inner Visions are the only Stevie Wonder albums I have personally listened to, so I'm a little late to the party. Obviously, like most music fans, I have heard Stevie Wonder songs here and there, but albums are a bit different, so I was kind of glad to finally get into this one. Sometimes albums work to produce an overarching theme, even if it's not necessarily a concept album. There can be a thin line between concept and mood, and I think Stevie Wonder's albums, from what I've heard so far, they definitely sort of produce a concept. Even though the songs individually might be a little different from each other. If Inner Visions was Stevie looking outward, pointing straight at political and social fractures, then Fulfillingness First Finale is him turning more inward. The album leans into themes of faith, love, doubt, and personal resilience. The energy is a little bit quieter than, the album that I listened to, Inner Visions. The tone is warmer, perhaps, and maybe more reflective. I don't know. I guess that depends on your point of view. Yet you still hear that spark that defines Stevie Wonder at his peak. Even in its introspection, the album carries his sense of hope and rhythm. It's really just his sound and style that is instantly recognizable. I think most of us, if we're at all aware of Stevie Wonder, we can recognize a Stevie Wonder song. Musically, the album blends soul and funk with a softer touch. It features the synthesizer textures that Stevie was exploring with Tonto, and that's like a sort of unique type of synthesizer from what I understand. And it was mixed with gospel and R&B roots that really ground everything. The production feels a little stripped back compared to Intervisions, but it remains detailed. And even though I would still think that I prefer Intervisions more, this album it's still a solid listen. Much of the instrumentation comes from Stevie himself, which adds to its intimacy, and also it simply demonstrates his mastery of multiple instruments. Sort of the stereotype of Stevie Wonder is that he's just playing a piano, but really he knows how to play drums, he knows how to play so many other instruments. It's a little wild, and he's a master of different instruments too. And you can hear the choices he makes moment by moment. It doesn't seem to be covered up by studio polish or whatever the kind of studio effects that I might use to fix up one of my tracks. It seems like he doesn't rely as much on that kind of crap, that us lesser musicians sometimes depend on. So, what about the key tracks from this album? So there's Boogie on Reggae Woman, which to me is like the main pop sort of song from the album. I think it's lighter than the other. I mean, even the title. Look at the title. It's Boogie on Reggae Woman. That's probably not going to be the most, I guess, topical song from the whole bunch. It's sort of a joyful, funky highlight of the album. There's a tight groove. If I remember correctly, there's some harmonica going on and a synth bass line that it still works all these years later. It became a major hit, climbing to number three on the Hot 100. And there's also Heaven is 10 zillion light years away. Obviously, this song is a little bit deeper than the other one. I think it's sort of a spiritual meditation, if you will. It's Stevie weighing the state of the world against his belief in something higher. And even though I'm an atheist, I can still understand, I can relate to these songs emotionally and what they represent. It's I think it's an honest track lyrically because he does represent the idea that there are reasons to have doubts about whatever god you happen to follow. And the song is it's a little bit of him grappling with the issues related to that. So yeah, that's a bit of a heavier topic for the album. And then there's They Won't Go When I Go. It's a sparse, haunting track and considered one of his most beautiful ballads. The song faces mortality and morality without blinking. So it's a reasonably heavy track topically. And You Haven't Done Nothing. It's also a political track. That one is sort of a burst of funk aimed straight at President Nixon, who was definitely the presidential villain of his time, of his heyday. The 1970s were when Stevie Wonder was really at the top musically. And the Jackson 5 actually jumped in on this track to do backing vocals, and it gives it a little bit of an extra punch. The track shot to number one, proving Stevie could mix some sharp commentary with commercial force, which is an impressive feat. Some people they do not like politically themed songs. They'll just be like, "Shut up and play the guitar or the piano in this case, and keep yourself out of the political arena." But Stevie Wonder, he wasn't afraid to go there, and this track proves that music and politics have always been a thing. And to some extent, was a it was a powerful song. It rose to number one. It wasn't total failure by any means, of course. If you've produced a number one hit, you're not doing that bad, of course. And there's also Creepin', which is like it's apparently a song that was covered by Luther Vandross as well. It shows how subtle Stevie can be even within a tight arrangement. And the album, it's a strong one. It hit number one on both the pop and R&B charts, and cleaned up at the 1975 Grammys, from what I understand, winning Album of the Year along with the Best Male Pop Vocal and Best Male R&B Vocal. This locked in the middle chapter of Stevie's historic triple win, sandwiched between Intervisions and Songs in the Key of Life. And although Songs in the Key of Life would later rise as his towering masterpiece in the eyes of fans and critics, I would say Fulfillingness First Finale is still an essential listen if you are a Stevie Wonder fan, or if you're wanting to become one. And critics and fans still praise its emotional depth, its innovative sound, and the way it bridges the fiery ambition of Intervisions with the wide scope that followed. It continues to appear on major all time album lists and holds a respected place in Stevie's legacy. And it's just something you can listen to. It doesn't have to be something that's so deeply involved as an experience for you. So that's one of the impressive things about Stevie Wonder too. You can be a casual listener. You could listen to this sort of stuff while you're doing the dishes or feeding the dogs or something like that. But it's also something you can like more deeply connect with, of course. And I suppose you could say that about other artists. It's not something unique to Stevie Wonder, but this type of music it's something for the masses, really. And the title says it all. Like, if you're trying to understand it, I mean, it's a bit of a confusing title, But if you actually think about what it means, it actually does make sense. You have a finale, but only the first finale. And there's a sense of completion paired with the knowledge that the journey continues. Even though it's a bit of a clunky album title, in my opinion, it's still a good album title. It's a weird thing to say that it's both clunky and good at the same time. But some things work like that. That's how art can be. It's a little bit confusing, like what works and what doesn't. So I think the album title is interesting, that and that makes it more memorable. You know what I mean? Like if it was just like a boring album title, like so many others out there, it wouldn't be the same album exactly. But you hear this quirky album, Fulfillingness First Finale, and you're going to partly remember it just because of that title. And the album speaks to reckoning and renewal, to facing the mess of life while holding on to what carries you forward. And of course, it's also a fun album too at times. So there's that. And Stevie Wonder's classic period is often remembered for its bold steps and massive statements. Fulfilling this first finale shows a different side, perhaps. So it's a little bit quieter, more reflective, it's honest, and sometimes that's where the deepest power lies. Well, thanks for listening, and until next time, I guess keep on fulfilling yourself until the next finale. I don't know. I was trying to come up with something clever as the final message here, but I think I failed. But anyway, have a good day.